But this is a Screen Rant article. We haven't really talked about Star Trek in a while, but we were talking about the Mirror Universe just a little while ago. So this Screen Rant article, it says Star Trek Next Gen characters could appear in Lower Decks animated show. Star Trek Lower Decks creator Mike McMahon hints that the new animated series may include appearances by some legendary Next Generation characters. Now, I have to say, I wasn't too enthused about the picture they chose here for fairly obvious reasons. If you've watched the show, if you're new to the show, check out our reviews on Star Trek Picard, and then you'll understand why I kind of thought this wasn't really the best picture to go with. Just me. But it says Star Trek The Next Generation characters may appear in the upcoming animated show Star Trek Lower Decks. As CBS All Access goes for maximum Trek coverage, the streamer is getting ready to add to its roster of shows with a new animated series focusing on the unsung worker bees of Starfleet. Entitled Star Trek Lower Decks, this new show is the brainchild of Mike McMahon, an executive producer on Rick and Morty, and the co-creator of Hulu's new series Solar Opposites. With that resume, McMahon is clearly a huge fan of both sci-fi and comedy, and indeed Lower Decks figures to take on some of the same mix of genres and sensibilities that inform both those other projects. A while back, fans were afforded a first look at the diverse array of characters who make up the cast of Lower Decks as the 10-episode first season gets set to debut sometime in 2020. So they are saying that Lower Decks is going to come out before the end of the year. I have seen another article where they said that Lower Decks is on schedule because with the shutdown, and Hollywood is still shut down essentially, animation projects are still going forward because they are able, a lot of people are able to work at home. They don't necessarily have to interact with each other. In fact, it's very rare now when it comes to recording animation that actors interact with each other anymore. They pretty much always just record their lines and they patch it all together later. So that's kind of an interesting aspect of why Lower Decks appears to still be on schedule. So one thing that they had a quote here, it says from McMahon, it says there's a lot of recognizable characters in the galaxy at that point. Next Gen is my favorite era, and as a huge Trek fan, I would definitely want to try to use some of them so that I could not only build out the world, but also work with some of my heroes. But I can't get more specific than that. You'll have to wait and see. Now, what he's referencing, by the way, is that this series, I believe, takes place right after the events of Nemesis, if I'm correct. So it's before Picard, but it's after Nemesis is when the events of this series take place. So the idea is that the Next Generation crew could very easily be still out there running around on the Enterprise, and therefore you could have crossovers where these characters would show up on Star Trek Lower Decks. And this is just a little intro to the main characters of Star Trek Lower Decks right there. This is a previous announcement that they made a while back. But I'm curious, Dave, if you had heard about any other buzz about Star Trek Lower Decks and what you think about possibly some of the Next Gen people coming on the show.
I saw some of these stories when they first broke. And I'm looking forward to Lower Decks. I think Lower Decks is one of those things that'd be a lot of fun actually to cover here on the show, because we've talked about doing kind of more. Well, I've talked about doing more stuff with animation on the show. But in addition to that, too, obviously at Star Trek, we're both huge Star Trek fans. I love Next Gen. My love of Next Gen has been damaged by Picard. I've stated that before. I can't watch Next Gen right now. I turn it on, and as soon as Picard shows up, I just want to turn it off. But maybe this is a way that maybe it could kind of help get me back into Next Gen. And I was just thinking about it'd be so much fun to have, for example, Data, or to have Riker, or any one of the, even Barclay for that matter. It would be really fun to have some of those fun Next Gen characters, as a part of this. I think that could be really cool. And that's a neat way they could do it because they're just providing the voice, and then they're animated so that, for example, Brent Spiner always talks about when he talks about revisiting Data, he always talks about how, he doesn't want to play Data, quote unquote, as an old man. You know, that's not something he said specifically. That's my alliteration of what he's always said. And of course, even with Picard, we have to revisit that idea yet again, and you know, put a nail on that coffin, no pun intended or implied. I mean, they literally did that. So
they literally did that.
They literally
did that. Yeah.
So this is a way in which, if they could get Brent Spiner to come back, he could play Data in his prime, and he can relax and just revel and enjoy being Data again for a little while. I think that would be kind of fun, even if it's a little bit part. So I think that this is a great idea, and myself, if I were working on this, I would love the opportunity to have, you know, Michael Dorn come back and be Worf, you know, for part of a segment or something. It could be really fun. So it makes sense to me. I think it's unfortunate we keep having to talk about Nemesis. How many times do you have to keep talking about this takes place after Nemesis? We need something that's past Nemesis so we can stop bringing up Nemesis. That's my whole feeling about this. Literally, when you said takes place after Nemesis, my eyes rolled so much they almost fell out of my head. So that's my feelings about it. I'm looking forward to Lower Decks. I think it could be a lot of fun. I love animation. I know my brother's a huge fan of Rick and Morty. I've seen a couple episodes of it, and it's you know, fun what I've seen of it. So I'm very excited for this, and I think it'd be something to talk about on the show.
So I did go to the panel at Star Trek Vegas in last August, and I did see the panel on Lower Decks, and I came away pretty excited about it. Much more so than Brent Spiner. The one that I always hear complain about the makeup is actually Michael Dorn. As you said, Brent Spiner, I think, has lost some credibility because he actually did play old Data. So we'll just leave it there. But Michael Dorn did not appear in Picard at all. And one of the reasons they say Michael Dorn isn't that interested, although he did say at Star Trek Vegas he would do it. He did say, because he was asked, and he said, but you could tell he's reluctant. Michael Dorn does not like being in that makeup. And all the rumors. In fact, they even said that at the convention. LeVar Burton was joking with Michael Dorn about all that Deep Space Nine money, because the rumor out there is that they paid Michael Dorn quite a lot of money to be on Deep Space Nine because he hates the makeup. So to me, it would be natural if he could be in an animated series, and he has such a distinctive voice as well. Michael Dorn has a great voice. So to me, he would be a natural. So that's the one that I'm hoping for. I would like to see Michael Dorn back, of course, as a Klingon, not as a Klingork. And by the way, this is the last chance I'm going to give for New Trek. This is something I think that's different. It's supposed to be a comedy. It's supposed to be lighthearted. So I'm going to give it a shot. I don't have CBS All Access right now. I got rid of it because there's just not anything right now that I'm interested in. I don't like New Trek, but I'm going to give this a chance. And so I think at least the first episode, Dave and I will probably review on this program. And I am hoping that Michael Dorn and maybe some other characters wind up on the show. I think it would be cool.
And when you consider that these are sort of the crew members on the lower decks that maybe maintain ship systems and such that we wouldn't typically think about, for example, like, you know, pulling from lower decks specifically, it would be interesting to see, you know, maybe this cast of characters, because they always had issues with the Defiant, for example. That's the way they could bring Michael Dorn on there, and maybe they're attached to do some kind of a service maintenance upgrade, or maybe they work briefly on the refit of the Defiant, you know, and that's the way that they could have Michael Dorn kind of reprise Worf, you know, briefly, and have these characters kind of interact, you know.
Well, I should specify, these characters are actually not the main characters of Lower Decks. This is the command crew. So this is like the chief of security, the captain, the first officer, and the doctor. These are actually not the main characters. The main characters are up here, but unfortunately we've got this picture of somebody else that I don't really want to talk about right now. These are the main characters. And yes, they're the support crew. I just wanted to clarify that, because these guys are actually the command crew, and they are not the main characters of the show. That's why it's called Lower Decks. These folks are, and they're all supposed to be like junior officers. Well, except for the old guy in the middle.
All right, well, there you go.
So,
All right,
Sorry, folks. If you've never seen the show before, check out some of our Picard reviews, and you'll understand why I'm talking like that.
Yeah. I'm not huge. Yeah, well, yeah. Where I'm coming from, anyway.
I'm pushing for Michael Dorn. I want to see Michael Dorn in Lower Decks.
That would be fun.